You're a young gay or lesbian person, you shouldn't look at the Supreme Court and see your opponent. You should see a referee, see somebody who's going to call it fair. They went out of their way to grab this case and use it in the way that they've used it. And now the First Amendment is being used as a shield for bigotry. The First Amendment is being used as a shield for discrimination. There were people in my father's day, in my mother's day, who said that the Bible separated the races, that after Noah we were separated, after the Tower of Babel we were separated, that it was ordained by God that blacks and whites should be separated. Do their religious beliefs now come back? Can somebody now say, as a matter of religious faith, I just can no longer serve the agenda of diversity? This is all nuts. But it's not just a tragedy. It's a result of a strategy. And we got to wake up and realize this is a serious political fight, not just a legal one.
All right, guys. So we got to thank President Trump for a free speech win against the Biden regime, because a Trump-appointed judge just issued a ruling that has the mainstream liberal media melting down. Okay, more specifically, CNN is melting down because the Dear Biden regime cannot weaponize the government any longer to try to censor free speech or to try to compel social media websites, big tech, to censor political speech, which we know that that's what they were doing to Twitter and other social media networks based off the Twitter files, okay? The bombshell revelations from Elon Musk showing that the old Twitter regime was colluding with the government in order to censor speech that the government did not like, aka conservative speech. And a judge has just put a stop to that, okay, by ruling that the Biden administration policing of social media likely violated the First Amendment, okay? I mean, this should be common sense, okay? I mean, you can't have the government basically trying to police people's speech using big tech, okay? I mean, they're trying to get around the First Amendment, and it's like, no. You can't do that. But again, you got networks melting down over it, and we're going to react to it. But first, I want to read about this ruling here, because again, this is a win for free speech in this country, and then I'm going to go from there. A federal judge issued a broad preliminary injunction limiting the federal government from communicating with social media companies about online content, ruling that the Biden administration officials' policing of social media posts likely violated the First Amendment. In a 155-page ruling issued Tuesday, U.S. District Judge Terry Doughty of Louisiana barred White House officials and multiple federal agencies from contacting social media companies with the purpose of suppressing political views and other speech normally protected from government censorship. Yeah, so they're saying, look, the White House and other federal agencies, like, for example, the FBI, right, you cannot be contacting social media telling them to take down posts for political purposes, okay? Now, they are allowed to do that when it comes to things like national security, okay, or, law enforcement or something like that, which, again, I guess is a loophole, because we know that the Democrats are trying to lock up their political opponents, right? So I guess they can say, well, we're censoring the Proud Boys, right, for law enforcement purposes or something like that, okay? But this mainly has to do with COVID, okay? The censorship that was compelled by the Biden administration on big tech to censor what they deem to be COVID disinformation, aka, what ultimately turned out to be truth about COVID. Ultimately, it was being censored because the Biden administration was telling big tech to censor it. The judge's injunction came in a lawsuit by the Republican Attorney General of Louisiana and Missouri, who alleged that the Biden administration fostered a, quote, sprawling federal censorship enterprise in its effort to stamp out what it viewed as rampant disinformation circulating on social media, okay? AKA anything that went against the Democrat narrative, right? The government, the lawsuit claimed, pressured social media companies to scrub away disfavored views about COVID-19 health policies, the origins of the pandemic, the Hunter Biden laptop story, election security, and other divisive topics. Right? Facts. Again, these things, in my opinion, all have outcomes on the election, and this is why they were doing it. A spokesman for the Justice Department declined to comment on the ruling. In a brief previously filed with the court. The department denied the plaintiff's allegations and said that the federal government took necessary and responsible actions to deal with a pandemic and foreign attempts at election interference. Again, amazing. Well, Russia, right? Russia, okay? Russia. This is why we did it, okay? It's just ridiculous. The case is among the most potentially consequential First Amendment battles pending in the courts, testing the limits on government scrutiny of social media content on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and other major platforms. Never before has a federal judge set such sweeping limits on how the federal government may communicate with online platforms, according to lawyers involved in the case. Some legal scholars have been skeptical that the government can be held responsible for content moderation decisions ultimately made by private companies, or that courts could intervene without chilling legitimate government speech about controversial matters of public interest. Okay, well, again, there's a difference between government speech, okay, in which the government says, hey, this is what we believe, right? There's a difference between that and the government going to big tech and saying, look, you have to censor whatever that does not agree with what we believe. Okay, I mean, those are two different things. So that being said, you guys get the gist of what's going on here. A judge has basically stopped the Biden administration from being authoritarians. And of course, CNN melts down over the Biden regime not being able to be authoritarian, which is what the mainstream liberal media has been melting down over all week when it comes to the Supreme Court rulings that, again, are stopping Biden from being authoritarian. Take a look.
Yes, this is a Trump-appointed judge, but this judge was confirmed 98-0 by the Senate. Just reading the words in this injunction, a, quote, massive effort by the defendants to suppress speech based on content, those are the judge's words, calling the present case, quote, arguably involves the most massive attack against free speech in the United States history, Ellie.
Yeah. It's a dramatic decision by this judge. If you read through it, he's citing to literature and George Washington and Ben Franklin. Here's what really is astonishing to me. This is a conservative ideology that clearly comes through in this decision. It's a conservative political ideology, right? We saw some of the quotes questioning vaccines, questioning masks, conservative talking points. But the ruling itself is the opposite of judicial conservatism. This is one of the most aggressive, far-reaching rulings you'll ever see. What this judge is purporting to do is to micromanage, really, the day-to-day interactions between essentially the entire executive branch, all these agencies that are listed as defendants, and the leading social media companies. And in the actual temporary injunction, the judge basically says, you're not allowed, administration, to talk to these social media companies about any protected free speech except for cybersecurity threats, national security threats, criminal threats. But where's the line? Who's going to police this? This is a judge trying to micromanage the day-to-day regular activities of the entire executive branch. I don't know that it's actually policeable by the judge, but it's really an astonishing. I don't mean this necessarily as a criticism. This is a very activist judicial opinion.
Yeah, so you know what's funny to me, guys? It's always so funny how the left goes out of their way to get so upset when Democrats are not allowed to be authoritarian, when the courts are literally doing their constitutional duty of checking the executive branch, when they try to take too much power, they want to get mad and upset. But we know if the roles were reversed here, right? If the roles were reversed, imagine if Trump tried to weaponize social media to, let's say, for example, censor a story that could have an effect on the outcome of the election involving his son in strange business dealings overseas. Okay, do you think that the mainstream liberal media would be reacting this way, right? If a liberal judge came out and said Trump can't do that, right? Like, that's a violation of the First Amendment. Okay, do you think that CNN would believe that it's okay for the government to try to compel big tech to censor speech if Trump was in office? I don't think so, right? I don't think so. Again, it's just so hilarious to me. These people show themselves to be Democrat Party cheerleaders at every single turn, okay? They can't stand any ruling that aligns with conservatives. Anytime something goes conservative way, oh, it's unfair, oh, they're activists, oh, yada, yada, bigotry. Okay, Van Jones, boo-hoo, whining and crying, talking about the courts are being enemies towards LGBTQ people just because LGBTQ people can't force people to make them a website, right? You can't force somebody to do business with you if they don't want to do business with you, okay? I mean, these are basic things. These are basic rights that people have, right? But businesses can say, look, I don't want to do business with you, okay, for whatever reason. You don't have to do business with somebody just because somebody's LGBTQ. But again, these people really, they don't care about the Constitution. They don't care about freedom. They're full-blown authoritarians. They're everything that they rail against. They're fascist. They're fascist. Right? Like, they want the Biden administration to be able to forgive student loans. They want to give the executive branch the power of the purse. Now, again, if Trump came out here, right, and tried to unilaterally, as executive, overstep Congress, okay, what would they be saying? Right? What would they be saying? They'd be upset. That's why Trump had such a hard time getting the border wall up, right? Because Congress didn't want to do anything about it, and Trump tried everything that he could to try to build as much of the border as he could. And guess what? They made a whole big stink about it, right? It was like, well, Trump's overstepping his authority as executive, right? Again, we know what they would be saying. We know exactly what they would be saying because we heard them say it before in the past. But again, this is what they want, right? They want the government telling big tech, this is what you should censor based off political viewpoints. Because again, the media is an arm of the government. They're an arm of the Democrat Party. And we know CNN is extra unhinged now because the person that was actually trying to make CNN not as biased, not as partisan, he got kicked to the curb, right? Because the employees at the network were revolting against the leadership because they didn't want to not be partisan, right? They're like, you're not letting us be Democrat hacks. You're not letting us be Democrat Party cheerleaders enough. We don't like this, right? We're revolting. I mean, they couldn't stand the fact that Donald Trump had a town hall with CNN. They made a huge stink about it, right? They made a huge stink about Trump having a town hall because these people don't believe in free speech. They don't believe voices and opinions that they disagree with should be heard, right? Even when clearly the speech they're trying to censor are facts, okay? They're trying to censor facts. Just like they did during the pandemic, okay? They got a bunch of stuff wrong about the vaccine. They got a bunch of stuff wrong about the origins of the pandemic. They got a bunch of stuff wrong about the virus. They went on television and spewed disinformation while at the same time cheerleading big tech, censoring what turned out to be true information, right? It's amazing, right? It really is. But again, you know, anytime CNN is mad, it's a good day for conservatives because that means that we're getting closer and closer to, freedom, okay? Which is what this ruling is. We shouldn't have the government trying to compel big tech to censor speech based off political opinions, which is what the Biden administration did, which is clearly a violation of the First Amendment. He honestly maybe should be impeached for it. But I'm just saying, at least a federal judge stepped in and stopped the authoritarianism, which again, these people can't stand. Okay, they can't stand when the Supreme Court or the judicial branch of the government actually does their job, right? The job that they were given in the Constitution, they can't stand it. Okay, it's hilarious to me. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.